Hello, I hope everybody's doing well. The denomination that I picked for this assignment is the Moravian Church. And just a few facts here about the Moravian Church. The Moravian Church is the oldest Protestant denomination in the world. It actually predates the Reformation by around 100 years or so. And besides being known as the Moravians, they're also known as the Unitas Fratrum, which means United Brethren. And that's because church unity is big in the Moravian denomination. The Moravians are named for the land of Moravia, which doesn't exist anymore. But when it did exist, it was located in the eastern part of what is now, today, the Czech Republic. Two Eastern Orthodox missionaries, one was named Cyril and the other fellow was named Methodius. They laid the foundations for the Moravian Church when they came to this region from Thessalonica, and they shared the gospel, and they started a church, and they translated the Bible into the language of the region, which was Slavic. And Cyril and Methodius, they got to this area before the Church of Rome got there. And since that's the case, a lot of the people, years later, when this area fell under the jurisdiction of the Roman Church, they already had their foundation in what Cyril and Methodius were teaching. And so they didn't really fall in line with what the Church of Rome was teaching in some areas. They thought there was a lot of corruption in the Church of Rome, and they thought there was a lot of false teaching in there as well. And many people in that area wanted to start a revolt against the Church of Rome. Let's see, the work of John Hus is recognized by the Moravian Church as being the first inspiration for their founding. So these guys, even to this day, they still recognize John Hus as being influential in their start. And John Hus was the primary reformer of that day in the area of what is today the Czech Republic. John Hus was martyred in 1415 for preaching against corruption in the church and against selling indulgences. Now, because of this opposition with the Church of Rome, the Moravians faced a lot of persecution. And because of the persecution that they faced, their church began to spread all over the continent of Europe. And it was during one period of persecution that a group of Moravians fled to Saxony, where they were permitted to live on the lands that belonged to a man named Nicholas von Zinzendorf. He was a count, Count Nicholas von Zinzendorf. And Zinzendorf was a very pious man. He was a godly man. He had dedicated his estate to be a haven for Christians who were fleeing persecution. And Zinzendorf was very influential in the Moravian Church. He's given credit for formulating much of their theology. He is also responsible for recruiting and sending out the first Protestant missionaries. He was big on sending out missionaries, Zinzendorf was. And how he came to send these Protestant missionaries out, the first ones, was that he happened to meet a former slave by the name of Anthony Ulrich. And Ulrich had been a slave in the West Indies. And Ulrich wanted his family to be saved. And he figured a good way for his family to be saved was for him to encourage Count Zinzendorf to send missionaries to the West Indies. He knew that Ulrich knew that God could save his family if people would go there and spread the gospel to the slaves. And so Ulrich didn't waste any time putting together a team of men to do that, to get there and preach the gospel to these people. Ulrich encouraged him to send missionaries to the West Indies to preach to the slaves, and he did this he sent two men, and these two men became the first Protestant missionaries ever. Let's see. The sacraments of the Moravian Church are baptism and the Lord's Supper, which is fairly consistent with other Protestant denominations. Regarding baptism, they do sprinkle their infants. But they do this as a covenant sign that the church and the parents are responsible for bringing up the child in a godly manner. But when the children or adults get older, they make a profession of faith, then they have to be baptized again. So they have to, they get sprinkled as babies as a covenant sign, and then when they get older, they, make a conscious decision to be baptized again. The Moravian Church does not have a strong presence in North America. There's only about 60,000 members here in this part of the world. But they do, however, boast larger congregation in other parts of the world. They still are very present and very active in the area of the world where they started. And they still send out missionaries to the poorest parts of the world. Thank you.